Welcome back to part two of a fantastic episode with Sarah, El Presidente of New South Wales, EHA, sharing her vision for world conquest. In the last episode, we talked about changes in legislation, but what that really led into was just the increasing demands on every environmental health officer, and then at the same time, how there's just not the resources coming through. And so how do you promote what you're doing? How do you get the finance for what you're doing? And if you go back and listen to those videos going, yes, I want to hear the answers, there are no magical fixes. And so that's part of the challenge. And so now what we're going to be doing is continuing on with our list of what Sarah's seeing as challenges coming up in the years to come. And a lot of these are just day in, day out problems that you're experiencing now. They're just going to be they're getting worse. So welcome back, Sarah. So we spoke about legislation. We spoke about professional recognition. Next challenge, changing society. What are your thoughts?
So I think that I have probably touched on it briefly previously, but I think that society is evolving, is changing all the time. There's a lot more.
Nowadays, they've just got it so easy. They've got it so.
I know. And the other thing is that everybody's an expert. They can look up anything on their phone. They can Google absolutely anything. They can, have access to an incredible amount of information, some that's correct and some that is very incorrect. And that is difficult. I spend a lot of time as manager speaking to disgruntled customers on the phone because they're not satisfied with the response that they're getting. And one of the things that I have noticed over time is the amount of people who have Googled something, take it as gospel, and then absolutely will not be swayed from their position. And I think that that's something that's been difficult to sort of talk your staff through and also, convey to your director and your executive team and your mayors and your councillors is that trust us. I'm sure that there's some operators out there that try to get rid of tasks that they don't want to do, but the majority of us who are in this profession are here because we want to help the community. We want to do a good job. We're not here to deceive anyone. So I think that it's very difficult trying to convey a wide amount of information and legislation and requirements as to how we operate in layman's terms to the general public so that they understand our limitations and the challenges that we're faced with, so that they trust us in that I'm telling you this because I have the appropriate skills and experience and qualifications to explain why this is or is not an issue. That again, that sort of links back to making sure that we've got people in these roles that have the appropriate skills, qualifications to deliver that messaging and to interpret legislation and to enforce the regulatory parameters, because the community has to have confidence in us that we're doing our jobs appropriately. And I think that all EHOs need to have confidence in, their team leaders all the way up the train, that when they make a decision on something, even if they get it wrong, you're able to go and have that conversation with your team leader, your manager, and able to explain the process that you took, because this is the reason that I thought that was the right thing to do, and they should have you back. I think that, there is an ever evolving expectation from the communities, particularly at a local government level, because we are the closest tier of government to the community. There's a lot of expectation for the community that we do absolutely everything. We can't do absolutely everything because of resourcing and because of legislative constraints. We've got arms of council now that look at economic development, sustainability, even climate change, making our communities more resilient to disasters. Councils are so diverse now in the services that they provide, but it also is backed by community expectation that we do have a function or a functional element in these previously non-core council functions. So I think that that's that's also adding to the issues that EHOs face, is that they're not just here doing their core mandatory functions anymore. They've got this ever increasing workload being brought down upon them that looks at these non-core functions, that there's this expectation in the community that we provide.
Yeah. Having just returned from Europe, it's amazing how clean Australia is. And you suddenly realize our expectations in Australia are now super, super high. And you have to go elsewhere to see that difference. And so in one sense, that's really, we've got high expectations. And then we've got social media where I can just complain to the world and suddenly you're the bad guys. So it is an interesting good, bad mix.
Yeah. And I think that it's quite funny in that we obviously undertake an on-site sewage management inspection program in our local government area, have done for many, many, many years. And yesterday afternoon, it blew up on social media, on our local name, shame and praise, that they could not understand why council had sent them a notification and that we were going to charge them for the privilege of inspecting their on-site sewage management system, and that they just could not understand or fathom why council was doing it, and that it was just a blatant cash grab. So it's quite funny how, every now and again, one of these standard services that we sort of provide will just hit a particular audience and blow up, and then here we are trying to justify or rationalize. I did go down the rabbit hole last night reading some of the comments, and it was very split. There were people who were obviously jumping on the bandwagon, flying the anti-council flag, and that
Tax grab.
yeah, it's a tax grab, that the inspector will only be here for 5 minutes, and I pay $180, and if they go to 6 properties in an hour, that person's getting $800. And it's like, that person is not getting $800. So yeah, it's quite extraordinary how social media, it's just that platform for everyone to have an opinion, which is fine, but not necessarily educated opinions sometimes.
Yeah, which I guess wrapping up this part of the conversation loops back to you've got professionals and you're trying to keep the level of the profession as high as possible. And so social media has that ability to either totally undermine everything you're doing or is then helping you. And so one of the challenges for, it doesn't matter what you do, but as an environmental health officer, is social media tool that you're potentially attempting to use to get the message out? What are the other ways? And the problem is that there's a huge flood of information, misinformation. There's a huge flood of crap TikTok videos that you're competing against while trying to inform or encourage. And that's something that's continually changing. So interesting times, once again, with absolutely no answers. We're just saying, hey, this is the problem, and talk about it, share, and yeah.
And I think just highlighting that it's not isolated. You're not operating in isolation. The issues that I have here in Goulburn, I'm sure, are the same issues that they have in Blacktown City Council or Penrith City Council. We're experiencing the same thing in all of our communities. We get this line thrown at us quite a bit. I'm a ratepayer. I pay your wages. I expect you to do this. And it's very hard to rationalise with people when they've got that level of self-entitlement, and they often will
it's
not
even funnier when they're behind paying their rates, and then you say, well, you're not.
Yeah, and we've found that social media is a real double-edged sword. We've gone to our communications officer at certain times and said, this is an issue that we're experiencing. We've got a clear spike in the number of complaints associated with this issue. We'd like to do a media release. And sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, no, that's too contentious. If we put up a media release about this issue, we'll get a huge backlash against council. So yeah, it's quite funny, having to navigate those sorts of things that, 20 years ago, we never had to give a second thought to. It's difficult to put that messaging out there in a way that it's received well by everyone. And I think that the thing that we need to acknowledge is that you can't please everyone. It doesn't matter whether it's professionally or personally, you absolutely cannot please everyone, and you need to tailor what you're doing so that it's for the greater good, for the greatest number. So we just need to be consistent in how we deliver what we're supposed to be doing, and that will lead to the best outcome. But yeah, we certainly find that education programs delivered at the source are very beneficial. We've spent quite a bit of time attending local high schools and primary schools, getting out different messaging, particularly around mosquito-borne illness. We've found that messaging that is clear, simple, succinct, you give it to the little people in a house, they're going to take that message back from school and make sure that mum and dad hear it 50 times. So we've done food safety campaigns at primary schools. We've done career promotion, so promoting environmental health as university degrees and career pathways at a high school level. And it's funny the amount of people who come back to me at work and say, did you guys go to this public school? Because, my daughter came home and told me. It's really good delivering those educational messages and educational programs at the source rather than it able to be manipulated and, get out of control in, a social media context. But we recently did a program. We were having a spike in native vegetation clearing. We noticed that. We collaborated with 2 state government departments and developed an educational campaign called the Call Before You Clear campaign, and it was an educational resource that was emailed or hard copied out to every single residents in our local government area. And in December we got a major award for that from local government New South Wales for that community education campaign. So that they're functions that, yes, that is a campaign developed in Goulburn Warri, but that resource is transferable across every other local government organisation in New South Wales. And that was the intent of us developing that resource, is that someone else from another LGA can pick that up and they can take it and implement it in their community however they choose. We have so many people who are doing such great work across environmental health, and I think that that's another thing that ties into that whole work smarter, not harder. Hey, someone told me that you had some really great resources on POE legislation or contaminated land regulation or food safety educational resources, diverse backgrounds. There's so much work that's already been done in all of these spaces that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's one of my big takeaways, that, we try and connect people with people who are experts in whatever issue they're having, or, come to our events and you meet different people, you get talking and you go, oh, okay, wow, you guys have developed a resource for illegal clearing. Can I have that? That would be great. That would help me so much. When I was a trainee, I had people that I met at different events, conferences, training days, our regional food group or regional environmental health meetings, who I said I wasn't getting certain experience in different functions because we weren't undertaking those sort of programs at that time. Come and join me for a week and undertake inspections with me, and I'll skill you up in that regard. I had a colleague who invited me down to the ski fields to undertake the food inspections down at the ski fields for a week and undertake the spas and public pool inspections down at the ski fields. Like they're opportunities that people are more than willing to expose you to, take you along on their routine stuff, which will be out of your routine. And I've found that throughout my entire career. And I suppose I see my time as president and also a board member on EHA as my opportunity to give back to the profession that's given me so much, and also to sort of pay forward the people who were so generous with their time and knowledge when I was a trainee and an early career professional. I think that, this is my opportunity to sort of pay that forward and to, share some of my knowledge and experience over my last 20 years with the next generation or people who haven't been exposed to the range of functions that I have in my location.
So just in case you missed it, that was just a shameless EHA plug. It's also Sarah's next election speech. So she's going for term 5 of El Presidente. But what I'd have to say is a couple of things. First of all, this podcast is not an EHA podcast. It's independent pod. And so what I'm about to say is based on being an independent person, not an EHA horn. I remember talking to someone who I met at EHA conference after EHA conference, and I was just sure they were an EHA member. And they turned around and said, no, why should I basically pay when they're getting all the benefits and they don't have to pay? And in their particular case, the council wasn't prepared to step up and pay. So one of the things about EHA is you don't have to be a member to get arguably 80% of the benefit. And that's awesome. And so, if you're in a council that's not backing EHA, still go along to the events and get the benefits, still talk to the members, still network. I think what was really nice about what you were saying is actually the reason for being a member now isn't necessarily about what do I get out of it, but what can you put into it? And it's bigger than just that one-on-one conversations. Also the fact that you've got an organisation that's there going to government and trying to fix things. It's also weighing into the public debates all over the place or whatever. So EHA is bigger. And yes, you aren't going to necessarily get that direct extra benefit for being a member, but what you're doing is investing in an organisation that's much, much bigger than just what you're seeing. So that's my shameless plug for EHA is, one, if you can't afford it, just suck them dry anyway and get the benefits. But two, it's well worth turning around and saying, no, this is important, become a member. Along with society, you then have emerging industries. Tattoos, for example, 15 years ago, it seemed like you only had 2 or 3 tattoo parlors. Now it looks like there's one in every single shopping centre. So it's gone from a small thing to, well, literally a household. Every second person's got a tattoo now. Any other big emerging things that from an environmental health, you're just going, hey, what's happening here?
I think that one of the things that we've noticed in our location over sort of the last 10 years, I would say, maybe even a little bit longer, just the evolving nature of beauticians. Yes, there's this evolving nature for tattooers. There's all sorts of implants that you can get, different tattoo styles, scarification, weird procedures to
That's a
split your
word that you
tongue.
would never have heard in Goulburn 20 years ago, and then you're suddenly getting scarification.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole range of weird and wonderful body parts that you can get pierced or whatever may be your desired result. Like there's all these things that have happened in that sort of body modification industry that have evolved over time. But I think one of the most challenging that we have dealt with here is the evolution of the beautician. You used to go to a beautician for, your waxing, your tinting, manicure, pedicure, those sorts of things, as long as we had them compliant with the public health legislation. But we have found that there's a great deal of diversification in that beauty therapist space. Some of them are doing, your laser treatments, they're doing skin needling, tattoo removal, cosmetic tattooing, microdermabrasion, like they're all practices that they weren't undertaking previously, and the legislation hasn't kept up with it. And as such, when you're trying to regulate these differing practices and trying to determine what qualifications should this beautician or person who is providing this service have, it's very difficult for environmental health officers to, piece that all together.
There was one a couple years ago, which was about the colonoscopy flushing ones, and you go, could you imagine just walking in on that and just going, yeah, okay. So that was a funny talk. Anyway, let's move on to changing in technology. Technology is an interesting one because I remember at a couple conferences ago was the discussion about all the cooking. Suddenly you're using something like Facebook Marketplace to be selling food, and you're going, wait a minute, whose jurisdiction does this come under? And then how do you police it? Should you be policing it? You step into your markets and someone's selling food there and you're going, well, wait a minute, trucks going between different councils and all this sort of stuff. So technology is throwing more and more problems your way. What are your concerns in regards to technology? What do you think are the nasty things that technology is throwing your way?
I think that there is an element with any sort of technology or AI those sorts of things, for it to be used for deceptive or devious purposes. We have heard,
Just
I
to
think
point
that,
out here, we made it through 1.5 episodes before mentioning AI.
I know, sorry to
uh,
dabble into it. But yeah, I think it is one of those. It's great in some components and functions, but there is an element to it. I think that it was touched upon by the New South Wales Food Authority about how they're needing to implement measures to ensure that people aren't falsifying their food safety supervisor certificates. And, an EHO who's undertaking a food inspection with limited time on their hands, your food safety supervisor certificate up on the wall, box ticked, go into the details of it. It's just another thing that we should be paying attention to. But, is it something that we're giving the time that it deserves, or is it something that we can even regulate at this point of time without the technology behind? I think it's just being cautious when you're presented with some of the new technology, but not discounting it entirely, in that I do think that there is some benefit to some of the functions that are coming through.
yes, if anyone can rot the system, then someone will work out a way of doing it. And meanwhile,
Absolutely.
it helps others. Yeah. We had someone approach us the other day saying, can you modify the results of the temperatures? And we're going, no, the reason why you've got loggers is because it's impartial. You're asking us to do the
Yeah.
exact thing that it's not meant to do. And so I think that's a really good place to wrap up our discussion, because we've basically said the big challenges for becoming or being an environmental health officer is about ensuring that you've got really good qualifications and you are professionals. It's about the fact that the legislation is changing rapidly and more is being thrown upon your plate, and you need to step up to that, and you need to be equipping and educating yourself, as well as, once again, that public perception. Technology is changing, procedures are changing, society's changing, and that's all the more reason for banding together. And it's also more reason why you should be watching EHO Knows, just to everything possible to be developing yourself so that you can be saving lives and making the difference that the role is all about. At the end of the day, it's about the silent ovation that you're all about. And so thank you very much, Sarah, for coming along. All the best with taking over, first of all, New South Wales, and then southern New South Wales and northern New South Wales and western New South Wales. We will slowly rename all the other states so they know who they are.
Yeah.
And all the best in the future. And I'm sure if anyone wants to contact you, they can.
They can. So New South Wales at eh.org.au. If you just Google Environmental Health Australia NSW, you'll be led straight to that. This year we've got a range of training coming up. So we'll be having noise management training. We'll be holding our introduction to POEO again, and that's been hugely successful, same as our investigation and evidence gathering one-day course has been hugely successful and really well received. But essentially, we're here for environmental health as a profession. So as Shane said, member or non-member, anyone can attend our events. There are some special member benefits, such as, our advocacy parts and also our special interest groups. You do need to be a member to participate in those, and some of our webinars. But essentially, as I said before, environmental health is a community, member or non-member. We welcome everyone, and we're here to advocate for everyone. But yeah, if you'd like to become a member, we'd love to have you, because membership is what allows us to keep doing these important pieces of advocacy work. And I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but all of us on the board are volunteers. We volunteer our time. None of us get paid. Even El Presidente does not get paid. So, we're all volunteers. We do it for the love of the profession, and because we think that environmental health is such an essential and worthwhile cause, that we need to be making sure that we're represented, that we're appropriately recognised, accredited, and have a seat at the table when people are having discussions about essential functions that we should be delivering. So yeah, if you'd like to reach out to us, please do. And a big thank you to Shane for having me, and also to On Solution for being great supporters of EHA at our event.
Great one to finish with. Thanks a lot for that.